Hello, I'm Sarah Grace, a student at Grace Christian University. I live in Warner Robins, Georgia, a bit of a melting pot, thanks to Robins Air Force Base, but still very much a Christian community where churches line every corner and a few in between. Options for exploring religious services in foreign languages are slim, but when we talk about language, we're not just talking about words, we're talking about culture. That includes the specialized vocabulary, rituals, and norms that form a group's unique identity. So for this assignment, I attended a Celebrate Recovery service at the Assembly of Warner Robins. It's a distinctly English-speaking subculture within the broader Christian faith, but it carries its own dialect. Terms like higher power, sponsor, and the 8 principles of healing. In Warner Robins, church attire also tells a story. It varies widely depending on the congregation. You'll see jeans, khakis, and sneakers mixed in with the Sunday spirit. But in true Southern style, some congregations still expect the traditional Sunday best, honoring the sacred, with suits and heels. This blend of dress reflects the layered culture identity of our community. So while I didn't hop over to a mosque or a temple this time, I did step into a different kind of sanctuary, and I encountered a different language. The Celebrate Recovery service was held on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. in the main sanctuary of the Assembly of Warner Robins. The service opened with a high-energy worship set, led by a live band. After that, a speaker walked us through both the CR8 principles, which are rooted in the Beatitudes, and the traditional 12 steps of recovery adapted with biblical comparison. Each principle and step was explained with real-life application and spiritual insight, connecting scripture to personal healing. At the front of the sanctuary, the altar space remained open, inviting folks to come forward for prayer or silent reflection. Before the service, there was a coffee station with water in front at the entrance area. After the service, everyone filtered through the fellowship hall for a cookie table. It wasn't a social gathering designed for long conversations, but more of a brief time to grab a couple of bags of cookies and head out. I did briefly introduce myself to the pastor of the Celebrate Recovery group, mentioning Windhaven Foundation's focus on domestic violence recovery. He handed me a mint and said, "Do you know what that makes you?" "A lifesaver." I smirked and thought, this man will absolutely appreciate my holy humor. It was a sign from God that we were in the right place for this connection. They also had their own culturally appropriate humor tied in, like hope dealer instead of dope dealer. A lightly humorous play on words, but with a deeper message. People wore jeans, hoodies, even t-shirts, but it was all respectful. The tone still honored the sacred. One thing that stood out was how the cookie table became a kind of sacred symbol, an offering of belonging. There wasn't an altar rail or traditional communion, but this table said you're welcome here. You're not alone. And that's holy too. I walked in with my husband and niece, who are the other 2/3 of Windhaven, as we were invited by a congregation member, Rose, whom Steph met during the opening premiere of Chosen at the theater. During that event, the power went out due to a tornado, and Rose seized the opportunity to evangelize the gathered audience. It was an EF0 tornado. It touched down just down the road and went right through the theater. So thank God everybody was safe. But Steph approached her for prayer, and the invitation to celebrate recovery flowed from there. I felt God's nudge when Steph shared the story about the invitation, and it was a Holy Spirit-led opportunity for us to attend this service. I immediately saw the connection between Celebrate Recovery and Windhaven's Crisis to Clarity domestic violence recovery program, which is currently being updated, thanks to God's timing. Once we were there, I experienced that familiar butterfly flutter of, do I belong here? So I was thinking about, the distinctions as well as the similarities in the crossover of various substance addictions and abuse recovery. But right at the door, there was a smiling usher. He handed me a card and said, "Welcome. Glad you're here." It's that simple human kindness that helped ground me. Once the worship music started, there was energy but also reverence, especially when folks gave short testimonies or went up to pray. Afterward, the cookie table conversations brought a different kind of connection. Celebrate Recovery. It uses its own lingo, its own dialect, really. When someone said higher power, it gave depth and personal meaning. Terms like sponsor sounded corporate until I realized it referred to a trusted accountability partner, someone to walk with you through healing. At Windhaven, we call them healing advisors. When we say sponsors, we're talking about corporate sponsors. But it gets us thinking about being clear in our terms. I loved how people were clapping, cheering, having little side conversations throughout. It wasn't really distracting, but rather a norm I felt very comfortable with. I tend to be someone who likes talking to my neighbor about the service as it's happening, so this felt like a good fit because there was already kind of a low hum across the room. I started adapting the content for our domestic violence recovery work. This experience challenged a few assumptions I didn't even know I had. I thought Celebrate Recovery would be a small circle in a classroom, but this was a full-blown sanctuary experience. Modern worship, stage presentation, the whole 9 yards. It reminded me that even in English, we speak different languages. Subcultures carry their own expressions. Just like families, friend groups, workplaces, we all operate in little micro-communities of meaning. Academically and professionally, this made me think. When I'm in group projects or ministry settings, I want to be more intentional about decoding others' language. If someone says something I don't understand, I'll ask, what does that mean to you? That opens the door to deeper understanding and better collaboration. The Celebrate Recovery at the Assembly showed me that foreign language isn't always Spanish, Korean, or even Hebrew. Sometimes it's the rituals, the rhythms, the inside language of a community, even with your own town, your own faith, and your own mother tongue. Next time you encounter a group whose words or customs feel unfamiliar, ask, what does that mean to you? Because when we decide to learn each other's subcultural languages, we're not just expanding our vocabulary, we're building bridges, bridges that reflect the beauty and unity of God's kingdom in all its diverse, sacred expressions.